Hello Wifey's favorite league. I'm your host Siri and we have a spicy week 4 to recap. This week we saw quite possibly the most heartbreaking loss I've ever witnessed in fantasy football. We also saw a team literally start a player who didn't even play and still win, and we saw our first place team continue to prove his dominance. Let's get into the matchups. First we look at the Father-Son Bowl Volume 2 as Papa Duncan looked to go 1-1 versus his offspring this season. Despite starting Alvin Kamara, who was ruled out an hour before the London game, the eldest Duncan was still able to come away with a win on the backs of impressive performances by Patrick Mahomes with almost 30 points and 22 points by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Once again, the least efficient manager on the week, Kieran left too many points on his bench, which would have been the difference in this one. Pops wins this matchup 141.4 to 120.62. Get your tissues ready for this one, folks, as we take a look at Rich versus Phil. As we mentioned last week, these teams have traded before, and after Thursday night's showing by T. Higgins, it looked like Phil had gotten a better deal. Back and forth these teams went all Sunday with the projections swinging one way and then the other until we went into the Monday night game with Phil riding a 6-point lead with the 49er defense versus Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Before halftime, Deebo Samuel scored a 57-yard TD that looked like it had sealed the victory for Richard. But Stafford got a staff and the Rams QB made a costly mistake late in the game that led to a 49er pick six, and all of a sudden Phil was right back in it. With only a couple of points separating them, the tensions were high. Mere plays later, the 49ers defense gets a sack, fumble and the recovery and edged the victory out for Phil by less than a point. No stat corrections. No mercy. Richard was quoted after the game with a lot of colorful language that we cannot share on our broadcast, but one PG-13 quote that stood out was Matthew Stafford can suck it he shall, as Richard is Phil and sick and falls to 0-4 on the season as Phil improves to 3-1. Richard, all I have to say is insert motivational quote here. You got this, buddy. Next we look at the matchup between David and Chantal. This was a rematch of the championship last year, and Chantal made sure to get her revenge against last year's winner. Kyler Murray woke up and played like the fantasy stud he has proven to be in years past, and Mike Evans exploded with 30 points on Sunday Night Football to push Chantal past David this week. Catchin Fields was able to get her first win on the year in a crucial matchup, and wins this one 150.52 to 121.82. Now we go to Ashton's 0-3 and Daryl's sorry Miss Jackson's. Daryl continues to be one of the most consistently high-scoring teams on the year, as he put up another respectable point total in this one. After getting his first win last week, Ashton's team unfortunately stumbled in this matchup and wasn't able to match Daryl's point total. Tyreek Hill continued to be a dominant receiver regardless of his quarterback, and Derrick Henry returned at King Henry fashion with another 20-point game. Daryl gets right back on track with a win in this one and sends Ashton back to the losing column with a solid victory of 142.8 to 113.28. To add injury to insult, Ashton has lost Javonte Williams for the year with a torn ACL. We wish him a speedy recovery. And last but not least, we have our current league leader Mordecai and the Rigby's taking on Assorted Chocolates. Austin Eckler finally had his breakout game, scoring over 30 points. However, Caleb's team still came to play, with Josh Jacobs leading the scoring with a 35-point game and Cooper Kupp doing Cooper Kupp things. Caleb continues to fly high on the season, moving to 4-0, staying undefeated, and scoring the most points on the year. He wins this matchup 169.52 to 146.5. Now let's see how all this has affected our rankings. Still atop the throne on our number 1 spot is Caleb. Daryl moves back into second place. Phil continues his climb on a 3-game win streak and moves to third place. Kieran drops a spot into fourth place after his first loss. Papa Duncan sits right in the middle at 5th. David drops down a spot into 6th place, pushing Claudia down into 7th. Chantal, off of her first win, moved up to 8th place. Ashton sits at 9th. And our amazing co-commissioner has the equivalent of a participation trophy in 10th. Now everyone look alive as we check out the matchups in Week 5. Kadarius Tony Montana takes on LA Ghoul in a grudge match between Kieran and David. Tempers are sure to flare as the two managers go head-to-head for the first time this season with their respective records and a bet for a meal of their choice on the line. 0-4 Phil Sick recovers from his heartbreaking loss in search of his first victory against the undefeated Mordecai and the Rigby's. Everyone loves a good underdog story, right? Not much better ways to get your first win than knocking off the undefeated top dog. Rich will take on Caleb in a game looking to desperately save his season before it's too late. Ashton's team takes on Papa Duncan. Can 0-3 get back on the winning track, or will Team Dadbud put together 2 victories in a row? Clemens takes on Assorted Chocolates this week as well. Phil comes in on a 3-game win streak while Claudia comes in on a 3-game losing streak. Clemens looks to increase his win streak to 4 in a row while Claudia fights to stop dropping down the rankings. Then last but not least we have Catching Fields taking on Sorry Miss Jackson's. Chantal took down the former champ this week. Can she knock off second place as well? Wilderall looks to continue his high-scoring ways and keep himself right in the conversation for best offensive team in the league. There we have it. We are now about a quarter of the way through the season and injuries are starting to set in. Make sure you've got plenty of depth on your team, and if not, go hit that waiver. For everybody that's not exactly loving the way this season is going, it could always be worse. Just look at Rich. And for Rich, well, hold on, I thought I had something inspirational to end with here. Never mind. Siri signing off.